let's talk about MLK. It's MLK
Yes.
Day. I'm drinking black coffee, and I've always wanted to do a book on all the taboos, because you're not allowed to point out that he plagiarized his dissertation. His PhD
Yeah.
was stolen from his professor, wasn't it?
Not sure I could call it up here. He was a serial plagiarist, actually. Yeah. I got this article that I wrote 4 years ago somewhere. Let me find let me find it. But yeah, it's proved he would never have been gotten a doctorate if he'd been taken to task for his plagiarism.
Yeah, and
But
I
I'm
don't
not
I
sure
don't think that is
I joked
disputed.
that, he was I never knew what kind of doctor he was, but he's a podiatrist. That was a joke that I told, but I think he was a doctor of religion, of theology or something. Yeah, he stole the passage from Stone Mountain in his I Have a Dream speech from a 1952 oratory delivered by another black peach. So he was ripping off blacks. And he plagiarized parts of the first public sermon he ever delivered in 47. Huge chunks of his doctoral dissertation were wholesale literary theft. So yeah, I guess he was a communist. He took what wasn't his and claimed it. And yeah, definitely had communist backers. That's well documented too.
Oh, well, there's so much to get to here, but we got time. So the dissertation, and I read Cecil Adams, The Straight Dope, and he's not like that. What are they called there? The couple that does all the myth busting that turned out to be total communists, the skeptics, whatever they're called. Anyway, I find The Straight Dope to be much more reliable. It's still pretty liberal, and even he said yes, he did steal huge portions of his PhD, but that doesn't diminish the work he did, blah, 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 blah.
Well, I mean, yeah, he did have balls. I mean, he got sent to jail for doing what he believed in. But the only thing I object to is, I mean, I'm a skeptic and I'm an iconoclast, and this posthumous sanctification where he could do no wrong and you just get scorched for questioning anything about him is bull. The guy had a lot of problems. I don't know if he had problems with infidelity. He was a serial cheater, and he especially, I guess, liked white prostitutes. And what was he said something that was hilarious.
We're all for Jesus now.
Coming for God tonight or something?
Yeah, coming for God tonight.
Let me see here.
Even the terrible things they say while prostitutes is eloquent.
For God as well. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. But also, according to Ralph David Abernathy, who was a civil rights leader, there's a street named for him here in Atlanta. The morning that he got murdered, and this is quoting Michael Eric Dyson, who's a black activist, citing Ralph David Abernathy, King shouted, and this is talking about a white prostitute that he had in his Memphis motel room. King shouted and knocked her across the bed. It was more of a shove than a real blow, but for a short man, Martin had a prodigious strength that always surprised me. She leapt up to fight, and for a moment they were engaged in a full-blown fight, with Martin clearly winning. So he beat around too, and I obviously don't have a problem with that. My problem is who knows what she said. But my problem is just this canonization. And I've done takedowns of other saintly figures of the left, like Nelson Mandela, who was a devoted communist, and the ANC used necklacing. Do you know what necklacing is?
Yeah, is that when you put a tire around your neck?
A gasoline-soaked tire and light the tire on fire as it's around you, and you get burned to death by burning tire, which to me seems crueler than lynching.
Yeah.
Nobody brings it up, but that was their tactic for silencing dissenters. Nelson Mandela, and was a committed communist.
And he blew people up too, did he not?
I'm not sure exactly what he did, but he was, communism, if you want to guilt by association, then of course he's got the blood of 100 million dead Europeans on his hands. If you want to play that game, if you're into guilt by association. Or Abraham Lincoln said tons of things about blacks that would be considered horrifying, would end careers easily these days.
Yeah.
And said quite openly he didn't give a shit really about slavery so much as preserving the Union. But that's all forgotten. So my beef with MLK is just not exactly him, but what people have made out of him. He was no saint. And
well, you can't have an open discussion about it. In fact, I was reading in the Post this weekend that a book that his wife had written or helped contribute to about how all the affairs were a lie and the infidelity was the government. And it gets to the point where everything negative is the government. Like Bob Marley didn't die because he wouldn't amputate his toe. He died because the government killed him because he was getting too powerful.
Isn't it? I know there's a story about Bob Marley. There was some well-meaning, they all are white liberal chick in the 70s who went down to his mansion in Jamaica and wanted to join the Rastafarians, and she was turned away at the gate because she was white. Marley also, I mean, Jimmy Cliff, a lot of better reggae musicians than Marley. I'm not sure why he's the chief guy. I never understood why his music was appealing to anyone. Plus, Bob Marley was the son of a white plantation owner.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that either. So if you want to talk about exploitation, I guess he bears that guilt too. But yeah, another guy who's been unfairly sainted. No one's a saint. I just don't understand why that happens. Why people have this need to see that someone who reinforced something they believe in was blameless. That's infantile and superstitious, nothing else. MLK, I guess he achieved some things for blacks. What he achieved for me, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't get mail today. That's the only difference.
He contributed to me some great quotes like, "We will remember not what our enemies said, but the silence of our friends." Something like that, but even better.
Well, and the people that ride his coffin, too, like Jesse Jackson, who still, for some reason, has a career. He lied. He said that he held Martin Luther King's dying, bleeding body in his hands. He was nowhere near the scene when this happened. But he went with that story for years.
Yeah, I've heard stories that he rubbed blood on his face. Like he eventually got to the cadaver, got some blood and put it on his face, going, "Oh."
That need to create more suffering than you've actually endured is pretty sick, but it's pretty common too.
All right, so we got Jesse Jackson lying about holding him. We got his dissertation was a lie. We have f***ing white prostitutes yelling about it and slapping them around. What I find really interesting, though, we talked about this a few years ago, was this whole concept of what happened to Detroit,
or anywhere, or Birmingham. I mean, you know, a lot of his marches were down here, and Birmingham is a hole. Didn't used to be. I mean, I guess, you know, a dog would bite you if you were black and try to date a white chick or something, but Birmingham's bankrupt, corrupt, crime-ridden. Alabama's not like Georgia. Georgia, for some reason, I guess there's so many blacks that we all get along because you'll be swarmed if you don't. But Alabama is just all black in the cities and all white in the country. And, you know, any of these, I think the last time I was on, I talked about this, like Camden, New Jersey, spotless in the early 50s. Now it's just like a bomb went off. And all these cities are, you know, Democrat run and have been for generations.
People the poverty in the rural South, when I drive through there, it's African. I mean, I'm stunned that people live in some of the homes they live in.
Yeah,
shacks.
Correct. Yeah, but it's a joke. They lost the war, so, you know, whatever happened to them, they deserved, I guess. I don't know.
No, but I'm talking specifically about Henry Ford and the protests. And I remember you said something to me that's haunted me ever since. And by the way, my favorite thing when someone says something is it comes with something that you can just see for yourself. I'm not explaining this very well, but we had this cold guy on the other day, and he's like, think about it. How did people survive 1,000 years ago? They must have been better at cold. And I thought, oh, that's a handy little, you know, sidecar on the motorbike that I can just take with me on my own and think about. And when you said, you go, think about it. Look at the signs they had at that rally in Detroit in the 50s. Or sorry, the Civil Rights March with Martin Luther King. All the signs are beautiful and look exactly the same. Do you remember that?
Well, these were financed usually by hardcore communists or socialists. All of the was managed and organized by what were subversives back then, but what are now the mainstream. Yeah, I'm not sure how conditions for black. I mean, there are a lot of symbolic gestures to black America, but families are destroyed. So many people are strung out on welfare, unemployed, cracked out, gang violence, all that shit. A lot of the progress has just been in symbolism, but people are stupid, so they'll take the symbol rather than anything measurable. I'm not really sure. My observation is when they desegregated black communities, the professional class got out and went to white communities, which create a lot of the hellholes. There's an area here in Atlanta called the Bluff. They had riots in the 60s, they started, once whites started making concessions, that's when the riots started.
Yes.
That's not when the riots stopped.
Right.
So they smelled blood and weakness and just started tearing the shit out of everything. But I think a downside of desegregation is there aren't these organic black communities where you have black doctors and black lawyers coexisting with the black peasants. That doesn't exist anymore. And the black underclass just lives in these hellholes.
Yeah.
So that's so great either. I mean, if you get a day off, I guess that's one thing that he accomplished. But otherwise, not really. I mean, Malcolm X was obviously ballsier and less, I guess, of a sellout or whatever the black version of a cuck was back then. Malcolm X was just, I mean, he was delusional. He believed in the Nation of Islam's tenets about white people being created by an evil black scientist and all that.
Right, but didn't he come around? Didn't he realize later, and I think this might be why he was assassinated, because he became open-minded about it and wanted to work with white people.
He went to Mecca and realized, hey, there's an Asian guy praying next to me and a white guy. And he realized, I mean, the Nation of Islam, that's, a bastardized version of Islam that says that, yeah, whites were created by an evil scientist, black men are gods, there's a giant Negro-operated flying saucer that's going to wipe out. I mean, the that they preach is more wacky than any cracker conspiracy theorist you've ever heard.
Yaqub was created in a lab Yaqub created white people in a lab just to antagonize blacks. What a dick.
Yeah. Well, he was a dick. Yeah. And I guess the original black sellout, I guess, or field house Negro or whatever, I guess, was Yaqub. Yeah. But
thanks, Yaqub. We have pictures of Yaqub. Can you look him up? He's got a funny looking head. He looks like the Elephant Man.
But he's just sanctified, and he's just not. He was a good speaker, I guess. But I don't understand why people can't see everyone as human and he had flaws. That's my whole point. And yeah, he beat up white prostitutes. So if you have a problem with domestic violence, have a problem with him then.
Okay. Well, I feel like I have to untangle some webs here in my own brain. I might be confusing the Civil Rights March in D.C. with Detroit and the auto industry. What did you told me once what really happened with the auto industry in Detroit? Wasn't it? Oh yeah, that was it. Didn't Henry Ford think the unions were getting too strong, so he bust up all these blacks to break up the unions?
He brought up scab laborers to Detroit to break up unions, yeah. And I mean, that's a lot of labor history in America. The original black slaves were brought because the indentured servants weren't cutting it. And blacks really started coming to the North in big numbers to replace striking white laborers. And of course, that's going to cause resentment with the white laborers and the blacks. It's all engineered. Never had a problem with black people. With a lot of the that the puppet masters are doing, I've become their enemy just because of this dogma that's pushed.
So Henry Ford ruined Detroit by importing blacks to bust the unions. The unions were busted. The blacks stayed there, and then they had trouble.
They rioted in the Detroit riots. Detroit's never recovered from that. And I guess one could argue that unions pretty much destroy the auto industry too. But Detroit's just uninhabitable. It used to be called the Paris of the West in the 1930s. It was considered the finest, most glimmering U.S. city, Detroit. Now it's a war zone.
But wasn't it? I'm sort of boring everyone with my own indulgences here, but I really want to get to the bottom of this. So it was doomed anyway. The unions would have ruined, because I saw the unions ruin the newspaper industry in Glasgow. Don't they just ruin everything? It was ruined. They were doomed either way.
Unions, I mean, that's a problem. I come from the working class, so I have sympathies there. The big problem with Marxism is it was written at a time when guys with hammers and sickles could shut everything down by refusing to work.
Right.
Technology and robotics makes workers irrelevant. So they're going to have to come up with something new, because workers, you can't shut anything down. They'll just get a robot to do it. And all they talk about, the right side of history, it's like you're using an outdated ideology. Marxism doesn't apply in the modern world at all.
Well, if they would just be more honest about both sides, Donald Trump mentions on a bus that women love you so much, these groupies, you could grab their pussy or something. Right. And that means we have an America where women are going to have their vaginas grabbed the second they walk out the front door, including babies.
Okay. Grab them by the pussy, we all know that. Okay, here's a quote. FBI surveillance tape, which reportedly reveals King watching TV footage of Jackie and her children leaning over JFK's casket, whereupon MLK said disgustedly, "Look at her, sucking him off one last time." That's your Saint Martin Luther King. At JFK's funeral, watching JFK's funeral, she's just blowing him one more time because she's crying that her husband got killed. Imagine if someone said that about Coretta Scott King wailing over
Oh
Martin
my
Luther
God.
King's assassinated body.
They'd have their tongue cut off.
Yeah. So all this shit about equality, they're not applying standards equally. He would have been like not had a career for him beating up white prostitutes, saying, look at him sucking off women, communist, if any of this shit would have destroyed a white guy. He was used as a tool. That's pretty much what I see. And I don't think Black Americans look up to him as much as they do people like MLK or as Malcolm X or anybody who came in his way.
Well, he's right. Malcolm X said, as Timothy McVeigh said, you need violence to truly solve something. And, you know, we got Deplorable coming up on Thursday. Everyone, they're going to be throwing piss and shit on women. They're targeting the female attendees in their gowns. They want to get piss and shit on their gowns. And you think, you need to be punched in the face, not debated.
Well, the thing that's not understood about MLK in Memphis, where he was killed, is he had been there a few months prior with a sanitation workers march. And these toward the end, they weren't all just nonviolent Gandhi types. They were smashing windows and looting stores at the tail end of this march. He was warned, don't come to Memphis with that shit again.
Oh, really? So you think it could have been a retaliation for the sanitation riots?
He was explicit. He wasn't all nonviolent. He had some and I don't, he did not encourage it, but they tailed along, and that's what he was warned not to come to Memphis again, and he did, and he got shot. But I mean, yeah, violence. Everything revolves around violence. The government rules by the threat of violence. They'll throw you in a cage, if you don't obey. That's so simple to understand. All these people talk about nonviolence. That violence is the way of the world.
Yeah, and there is something really magical about someone who's been punched in the face. You're just a different man for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what unsettles people about me to some degree. It's like, okay, let's go. I've had my head knocked in. It's just the threat of violence isn't what's going to stop me.
Yeah. Well, I always say to that to people too. They go, "I want to fight you." I go, "You can kill me. You'll still be wrong, and I'll be right." That you can't change the hate fact.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, violence doesn't prove ideology. It just proves that the more violent person wins. That's that people. Oh, well, the South lost the Civil War, so they were wrong. It's like, no, they lost the Civil War, so they had a military. That's all that. Or the Nazis or any of them.
Or the Indians after 400 years. Sorry, you had inferior firepower.
They're not out there, with pamphlets arguing policy. They're out there with guns killing. That's how wars get won. It's not who's right. It's who's more violent.
Yeah.
I wish it was otherwise, but we're not civilized enough at this point. And I think white people need to reclaim the savage part of them a little bit. They've obviously lost that and become too tame and cosmopolitan.
Yeah, and it's a great time to reclaim our savagery because we're up against these wimps who have nothing more than a jar of pee-pee.
Yeah, so you've been threatened with bodily fluids.
Not just me. There's spies within the left, and they've published this. They've discussed this. I think Soros is behind it because there's these people that are making like $2,500 a month to be agitators, and they've got these big halls and meetings, and they've got big plans for Thursday night and Friday. They want to shut down the whole city.
I'm going to be on the National Mall on Friday reporting, so we'll see. I would love to fight any one of them.
It would be an honor, wouldn't it?
As long as someone's recording, take the first shot, mother, because you'll be flat.
Well, they always do the same thing, too. The second you go for the throat, they go, police! Police! Yeah. The emphasis is on the second syllable for some reason. Lease!
Yeah, the police, unless you can snitch someone out for a fake hate crime or snitch someone out for hitting you back. Sure.
Right.
Okay.
All right, Jim. Well, thanks for coming on the show on this beautiful MLK Day.
Wonderful. You have a nice day, sir.
Cheers. I have a dream.